Have you ever felt like you were the victim of a monster? I hope not. I hope not. But we do live in a tough world. Uh, the Beowulf is an old English epic poem of the 6th century in Scandinavia during the pagan times. It talks about, or it's inhabited by a monster called the Grendel. The Grendel is an old monster that prowls about the inlets of the Scandinavian coast and preys upon. It attacks the mead hall of Hrothgar, the Danish king, and slays about 30 of Hrothgar's men. Comes back and just rips them limb to limb, just tears them apart and literally drains their blood out. And this is what fuels the rage and lust of the this monster Grendel. Now, this is an exaggeration of what your typical narcissist does, because many of us have perhaps been the victim of a narcissist at one time or another in our life, and so we need to realize that they aren't quite as bad as Grendel. Hopefully they're not as bad as Grendel, but they do tend to drain our blood. If we have a interaction with a narcissist, they may not rip us apart, but we may feel as if they've drained our blood. So we're going to talk a little bit about the narcissist. We're going to take a little imaginary walk through a graveyard with a Somerset Maugham, the great writer. Now, first, I just want to talk about what are narcissists. I'm going to look at their traits real quickly. I'm going to show you their traits, and then we're going to look at an example, a real example of a narcissist from a Somerset Maugham story. So here's some common traits of narcissism. I mean, and you may have. Now, let me just say this. As I read these off, inevitably it'll be easy to see. Yeah, I know someone like that. But keep in mind, um, some of these are, to a certain extent, I think all human beings are narcissists. I mean, we all tend to be. I mean, right in the famous book How to Win Friends and Influence People, Dale Carnegie says, that people don't care what you say to them; they only care about themselves. They don't care about you; they only care about themselves. This is a common human trait. I think to a certain. That's why when we talk to people or people are talking to us, sometimes we aren't listening. We're thinking about what we want to say about it because we're self-centered. It's natural to be self-centered. I think the problem with narcissists is that it's gotten out of control. So the point here isn't to point the finger at anybody else, but to have an indomitable mindset. We need to know how to respond to toxic situations. And here's some traits of the narcissist: overinflated sense of self-importance. Okay, a lot. It's not just a little vanity; it's overinflated. Constant thought about being more successful. By the way, young people may even go through a narcissistic phase that they outgrow. So just because somebody exhibits some of these traits, especially young people, doesn't mean it's going to stick. They may be just going through a phase. Overinflated self-importance, constant thoughts about being more successful, powerful, smart, or attractive than others. So comparison with others favorably. Feelings of superiority. Willingness to take advantage of others to achieve goals. That's not good, but it happens all the time. Lack of understanding and consideration for other people's feelings and needs. Lack of understanding of other people's feelings and needs. That's not good. Arrogant or snobby behaviors and attitudes. Obsession with having the best of everything. Concentration on power, riches, and success. The use of people to get what they want. Now, I may have a couple of these traits. Any of us may have a few of these traits. That doesn't automatically mean we're a narcissist. According to one source, you need to have at least 5 of these traits in order to qualify as a narcissist. Now, I'm going to just read you a few passages from Somerset Maugham's story, the taipan. Now, the title tells you a little bit right there, because the taipan is a snake found in Australia. and it's one of the most deadly snakes in the entire world. Its venom is deadly. So the title of this story tells you a little something about the narcissist who inhabits the pages. I'm just going to read you a couple passages to give you a picture of a real narcissist. Now, this was an Englishman who was in China. He was part of the colonial period, and he was an important person. It says right here, he was in the very first line of this story. He was an important person. No one knew better than he that he was an important person. That's the narcissist right there. His main focus is how important he is. He was the most important person, and he worked for the most important English firm in China. Okay, and then it says he remembered the modest home. This comparison with the focusing on the best. He remembered his past. He used to live in a common home, in a modest home in a little red home, a little red row of houses. But he called him sordidly melancholy, and he compares it with what he has now, a magnificent stone mansion. So that's his own residence now. So that just gives you a sense of some narcissistic traits there, is focusing on materialism and how they show his superiority. Now, I want to read another passage here, which is just an explosion of narcissism. It says here, uh, in another 5 years, Higgins would be going home. Then he would take charge of the head office in Shanghai. Meanwhile, he was very happy where he was. He could save money, which you couldn't do in Shanghai, and have a good time in the bargain. The place had another advantage over Shanghai. He was the most prominent man in the community, and what he said went. Even the consul took care to keep on the right side of him. Once the consul and he had been at loggerheads, and it was not he who had gone to the wall. The taipan thrust out his jaw pugnaciously as he thought of the incident. Okay, so he's just swelling up with pride as he overpowered this powerful man. And then here's another passage about the narcissist. He's talking about, the narcissist is taking a walk through a cemetery in this scene, and he knows a lot of the people in this cemetery, and his reflection on these tombstones tells so much about how he sees other people and how he sees himself. So it says here, they had never seen so. You had to have a strong head and a fine constitution to go drink for drink on the China coast. Of course, it was very sad, but the taipan could hardly help smile when he thought of how many of these young fellows he had drunk underground. So he's got these head gravestones around, and he's going, yeah, I drunk that guy into the grave. I drunk that guy into the grave. The only thing is, he's telling this is actually what happened. These guys drank themselves to death. They couldn't handle their booze the way the taipan could. So he's sort of laughing at them that he drunk them underground, like he beat them. So the taipan could hardly smile when he thought of how many of those young fellows he had drunk underground. And there was a death that had been useful. He's talking about a specific one now. And here was a death that was useful to the taipan. That's kind of scary. To look at somebody's death and eternal soul in that way. It doesn't matter. It's only about what can I get from it. So it's a fellow in his own firm, senior to him, a clever chap too. Doesn't even bother to name this poor soul in the grave. It's just somebody who he was able to benefit from. A clever chap too. If that fellow had lived, he might not now be the taipan. So he's only the taipan because some other guy died. So he's kind of pleased about that death. Truly, the ways of fate were inscrutable. And here was Mrs. Turner. Oh, Violet Turner. She had been a pretty little thing, and he had quite an affair with her. He had been devilish cut up when she died. So he actually cared about Miss Turner, and he was sad when she died. He looked at her age on the tombstone. She'd be no chicken if she were alive now. And he thought of all the dead people. A sense of satisfaction spread through him. He had beaten them all. They were dead and he was alive. By George, he'd scored them off. So there you go. Here we have this taipan. He has absolutely no compassion for these people who had died. His only concern about them is that these were like a score. This graveyard was a scorecard for him. Every one of these tombstones was like a check on his scorecard, and he had beaten this one. He had beaten this one, and so he had ruined Violet Turner. So those are some traits of the. There's some other traits of narcissism that didn't come into this scene. Jealousy of others, belief that it's the entitlement mentality, monopolizing conversations, sense of entitlement, need for excessive admiration. Those are just a few other traits of narcissism that didn't play into this particular scene. So to be unstoppable, to have the unstoppable mindset, there's a few things to keep in mind, really important. First of all, we need to be aware of the narcissist, because these people can drain us. They can stick their fangs into us just like a taipan snake, and either infect us with venom or just like drain our blood like the Grendel. So it's not pretty imagery, but it's not pretty behavior either. So we need to be tough. We need to be tough because we are going to run into some scoundrels and some people who might hurt us. So we need to be tough and just get on, be tough, be kind. We need to be kind to ourselves, because a narcissist can be mean and treat us as unimportant, and we don't want to allow these people to cause us any self-hatred or to believe the callous things that they say about ourselves, and maybe have self-hatred. So no, no, no. We need to be kind to ourselves. Very important. You got to have an abominable, the abominable mindset. You need to be kind to ourselves, because we don't need extra weight slowing us down. We need to be forgiving. We need to be forgiving of the mindset for a similar reason. Forgiving of, first of all, forgiving of ourselves, because we too are, who among us is without sin? We too are we're not perfect. We need to be kind to ourselves for our own mistakes, and we need to be forgiving of the narcissist, because it may be because, yeah, we, for the reason that we also make mistakes, but also just because, look, we need to forgive them because it takes a burden off of us. God said, if you forgive others, you too can be forgiven. And that can lighten our load if we too are forgiven. And if we aren't carrying the burden of vengeance and the burden of resentment, that these things that weigh our soul down, we need to be forgiving even of the narcissist, and be prayerful. We need to pray for our enemies, pray for that narcissist. Uh, we benefit from doing these things. It lightens our soul. It takes the weight off of us and allows us to you know be at full force and have an indomitable mindset of love. Of love. Be scarce. We may need to avoid the narcissist if possible. Be a seeker for help. I'm not a relationship coach. If we're in a relationship with a narcissist, we may want to talk to a priest or a pastor and get some expert advice on how to deal with a relationship. Finally, I just want to quote Prince Albert. Prince Albert said, "I have had wealth, rank, and power, but if these were all I had, how wretched I would be." I've had wealth, rank, and power, but if these were all I had, how wretched I would be. Thanks for watching. If you appreciate this content, hit that like button. It makes a big difference. I appreciate it. Fight on.